The Swineherd. A handsome prince fell in love with the emperor's daughter. But she was a very spoiled princess who had everything a young girl could want, and he knew she would be hard to win. The prince was not rich, and all he could think of to give her were the two most precious things he owned. One was a rose which flowered over his father's grave. It had only a single perfect bloom once every 5 years. The other was a nightingale that sang the most beautiful tunes in the world. The prince sent the gifts to the palace in 2 handsome silver chests. There was great excitement when they arrived. But when they were opened, the spoiled princess was disappointed. "It's just an ordinary rose," she complained, looking in the first chest. "And what a dull little brown bird." "Let it fly away," she ordered sulkily, turning her back on the second chest. The prince heard how ungraciously the princess had received his gifts. "I'll teach that young lady a lesson before I marry her," he decided. The next day, he put on a tattered cloak and a battered old hat and went to the palace. He knocked at the door and pretended he was looking for work. "Is that another prince bringing presents?" asked the greedy princess hopefully when she heard him knock. "No, Your Highness," the footman told her. "It's only a poor man looking for work. I sent him down to the pigsty because we need a new swineherd." So the prince became a swineherd and looked after the pigs. To cook his food he used a little pot which had bells hung around it. When the pot boiled, the bells played a tune. It was also a magic pot. Whoever sniffed it could smell what was cooking in all the houses all over town. The servants began gossiping about the swineherd with his amazing pot, and the princess grew curious. "Tell the swineherd I will give him a gold coin if you will give me the magic pot. It would be such fun to have as a plaything," she said to her maid. The maid went to the dirty old pigsty and gave the swineherd the message. But the swineherd shook his head. "Tell the princess that I don't want money, but she can have the pot if she will give me 10 kisses, he said. The maid was horrified at the idea and hardly dared to repeat the swineherd's answer to the princess. But the young man insisted that was his price, so the princess finally agreed. "You must all stand around so nobody can see," she told her maids. The emperor, who was on his way to see the famous pot for himself, noticed the crowd of girls by the pigsty. When he saw his daughter kissing the swineherd, he was furious. "Leave me immediately," he roared, and banished them both from his kingdom to a place where it poured with rain and the miserable princess was always drenched. "Whatever shall I do?" she wailed. "I wish I had married that prince who sent me the rose and the nightingale. I don't suppose anybody will have me now." "If you promise to be a much nicer person from now on," said the swineherd, "I can make your wish come true." The princess was about to protest in her usual haughty way, when she turned and saw, not a swineherd, but the prince himself. He had thrown away his old hat and cloak and was smiling down at her. Despite all her faults, he still loved her and wanted to marry her. The princess learned to be humble and kind by following her husband's example, and they both lived happily ever after.